Hey everybody, Austin here. And after that summer-long tribute dedicated to Robin Williams, please go check out those videos. They're really good. They're a great showcase of just how funny he was, just how great he was as an actor, and really just how much we really wish he was still here amongst us. Anyway, I figured I'd take a step back from the movie reviews in favor of looking back at really the first year of doing movie reviews in general for really this channel, because Ace does a lot of management, and this was, and really 2020 was the first year that I started doing videos. Granted, they weren't uploaded until about a year later because Ace had to input some other information, but nevertheless, these were made during 2020 when pretty much we were locking ourselves in our houses and pretty much fending off a lot of people with a stick. We were looking like we were about to perform surgery on somebody's butt or rob a train or something. And just in general, it was a time a lot of us probably would like to forget. But hey, a lot of us can't forget, but I figured I'd take a look back and sort of just look at the first year of doing a lot of these reviews because, well, that's how it all started. And really, we're going to start with this baby here. First, we start from the beginning. The first review I ever put together, and the first video I had ever conceived. And obviously the first time you noticed my running at the seat of my pants routine that permeates in everything I do. In this case, I covered Escape from New York, from the one and only John Carpenter, and starring the ever-so-awesome Kurt Russell as Snake Plissken, which was a movie that had the fixings of what I looked for in a review. For one thing, it was fresh in the mind, which is always good when you review something, and also, it was a genuinely great movie that I liked. And as I said in that review, it's a favorite in terms of Carpenter's filmography, alongside Assault on Precinct 13, Halloween, Thing, Starman, and Big Trouble in Little China. So yeah, it was a good idea for a first review. However, it also suffers from first-time syndrome, in that your first attempt isn't going to do as good as what you would do later. For example, Assassin's Creed from 2007 is nothing when you compare it to every other Assassin's Creed game that would come later, especially once you get to Black Flag, where you are literally a pirate. While you would certainly see the template of how these reviews work, starting with the story, the production, sometimes being in parts if not just one whole section, the opinion, and the aftermath/reception of the film, with other segments sprinkled here and there, it's definitely not the most in-depth form of production example. I mostly read off of whatever source I could find, occasionally having some things inserted in the context for humor, and I didn't start naming off what filming locations or other studios that did work on productions besides the subject in question until later. Same goes for those who may have worked on other things before or after they worked on the subject in question. I also was rather inconsistent with the font I use, going back and forth between one font and then using a completely different one, something that would be fixed in later videos. Also, pay attention to me in this clip. Listen to my voice. The film's setting proved to be a potential problem for Carpenter, who needed to create a decaying, semi-destroyed version of New York City on a shoestring budget. What's missing? Take a guess. Think about the most famous movie critics like Roger Ebert, Gene Siskel, Leonard Maltin, or Gene Shalit. Think about YouTube critics like The Angry Video Game Nerd, The Nostalgia Critic, or The Cinema Sound, or even other YouTubers such as PewDiePie, Jacksepticeye, Markiplier, The Game Grumps, Chuck Conroy, Nintendo Capri Sun, Metal Jesus Rocks, The Dolly Popka, Mike Tando, aka Dongle, or even the late Kitty0706. What do they all have that I seem to not have in this video? there's no energy in my voice here. Really, throughout the video, I just sounded bored, which wasn't how I felt, but the sound of my voice spelled something else. Needless to say, I definitely got better about that as time went on, as I definitely sounded a lot more lively in later videos. But in this video, I sounded like Ben Stein teaching economics, or like the purple Dr. Fish from SpongeBob. You'll also notice that I don't use clips from the movie or any music in the background, minus 2 other moments, as I wouldn't implement these until later, especially when it comes to music playing during the voiceovers. But still, this was a beginning for yours truly, and it certainly laid out the formula for what was to come next. One last thing is that this is the first instance of me showcasing a montage of fictitious characters who just so happen to be fans of a certain director, franchise, or even just a character, which I still sometimes do. It's just now I use less copyright claim heavy music in favor of something that doesn't trigger it. These did have music, unlike the voiceover. In particular, Fleetwood Mac's Gypsy for the montage, and during the credits, I used Motley Crue's Same Old Situation, SOS, as this was before I used video game music because it was usually safe from the YouTube copyright claims. So yeah, this was the first video. Primitive, yes, but as you can see, the best was yet to come. Following this first review, I set my sights on the next one, where I chose to take on the task of reviewing Tim Burton's Batman. Why? Because it's awesome, that's why. This also marked the first appearance of Jeremy, the surfer dude who starred as another personality, amongst many others, which we never really explored because we didn't care, as opposed to what he is now, which is just another dude like everyone else. Here, he obviously is more antagonistic and more or less is trying to take over my body for no other reason other than he just wanted control. There was at one point where I almost did have Jeremy do the review, but ultimately Jeremy wouldn't review a film until 4 years later, and that was after trapping him in a wine bottle following an internal struggle and nearly having my face smashed with a baseball bat with Roy Batty's face on it. As for the video, it was pretty good, as I definitely was getting better at looking less like this was about to happen. It's still not perfect though, as while I did get better, I did miss some things, such as with the Wayne Manor doubles, as Nebworth House was used in Anastasia, The Great Muppet Caper, 28 Days Later, Match Point, and The King's Speech, and the Hatfield House was used in Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, or the Apes, Hot Fuzz, Paddington, as well as the sequel, and All the Money in the World. And Acton Lane Power Station was also the area of the alien hive and power plant in Aliens, and a lot of that film's sets remained there before being redressed for the Axis Chemicals plant. And once again, I mostly read off the source rather than take the source's information along with that of any other sources and add more facts upon to those facts, as well as any jokes I may want to make. And there's still no consistency with the bond. It's also the only instance where I call the opinion piece thoughts on the film rather than my overall opinion. Still though, this was certainly enjoyable, especially considering I also did the fan montage here as well, using Queen and David Bowie's Under Pressure during that moment. But I should also mention that in the original version of this review, it had ended with Fleetwood Mac's Don't Stop, while in the version I was able to put out, it features Aerosmith's Janie's Got a Gun. Why? I have no clue. but all I know is that playing Fleetwood Mac music, with few exceptions, tends to get the big red copyright claim from YouTube, meaning I got lucky with Gypsy. But it certainly was a second video, and is the reason Jeremy exists, and he has redeemed himself in my eyes. Now here's the movie that was so fresh in the mind that I had to talk about it, because I had a fascination with this film up until reviewing it for the first time. Close Encounters of the Third Kind was a review that I certainly had a good time with, because there was a lot of information for me to work with, and actually had me getting more information on the individuals in question, or any filming locations where certain things were also filmed. Not to mention, it's just really fun talking about a Steven Spielberg film, as he was one of two influential figures named Steven throughout my life. The other being the late Steven Hillenburg, the creator of my favorite show of all time, SpongeBob SquarePants. Two great Stevens, one still kicking, and one who may be gone, but most certainly won't be forgotten. There were some things I forgot to include though, including that before Richard Dreyfuss was cast, Steve McQueen was Spielberg's first choice, but McQueen felt he wasn't right for the role because he couldn't cry on cue, despite being impressed with the script. Robert De Niro was considered, Jack Nicholson declined due to scheduling conflicts, and James Caan, Dustin Hoffman, Al Pacino, and Gene Hackman all turned down the role. Before Francois Truffaut was cast as Claude Lacombe, Gerard Depardieu, Philippe Noiret, Jean-Louis Trintignant, and Lino Ventura were considered. Meryl Streep and Amy Irving auditioned to play Roy's wife Ronnie, and Terry Garr wanted to play Jillian but was cast as Ronnie, and Melinda Dillon was recommended by Hal Ashby based on her role in Bound for Glory. And you know the Vincent Thomas Bridge, which is where the UFOs fly through the toll booths, which had been abandoned, and the bridge itself was where To Live and Die in LA, Lethal Weapon 2, the original and remake versions of Gone in 60 Seconds, Charlie's Angels, and Inception were filmed? Well, it's also a suicide bridge. In fact, this was the bridge where director Tony Scott took his own life, which occurred on August 19, 2012. I may have an undying hatred for Top Gun that has boiled within me for a decade now.
I'm leaving. Does he have to take a dump?
But I love True Romance. Beverly Hills Cop 2 is excellent. Crimson Tide is awesome. Enemy of the State is really good. Spy Game is a gem. And The Hunger, which was his directorial debut, is an underrated horror film from the director. And it's a shame he's no longer with us. He could have made an MCU movie if he given a chance. Another thing I forgot to mention is that Close Encounters of the Third Kind was the third highest grossing movie of 1977, behind Smokey and the Bandit and of course Star Wars. And in 2007, it was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress, which is really something important that I just didn't note for some stupid reason. But yeah, that was my review for Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which also, again, has a fan montage, which in the original version has the Eagles' Take It to the Limit playing in the background. But because Don Henley has no idea how the internet works and he won't let you use his music or any Eagles music at all, going full red every time rather than yellow. So I had to change it to Boston's More Than a Feeling, which actually is heard in the film very briefly when it cuts to a shot of the power going out of the McDonald's, as the song itself was long enough to fit the montage. While the video ends with the ending theme from E.T. the Extraterrestrial, because I didn't and still don't have the score for Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I really need to fix that at some point. Overall though, I like this review quite a lot. and Close Encounters of the Third Kind is still a great film that you need to see. As we have seen on the show, most of what I review goes back to at least 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, and even the 2000s, as those are the movies I feel the most inclined to talk about. But we have talked about older movies too, and early on, I did, as I covered Alfred Hitchcock's classic thriller, Rear Window, which had come out all the way back in 1954. Which means it's now 70 in 2024, and I had fun reviewing it. While it was the simplest of production segments and was rather short, and there may have been a fact or two that I may have missed, I certainly enjoyed my time with this video. It was also the oldest film I had covered up at the time, until covering Casablanca last year, and really, Rear Window is such a wonderful film. With a biting sense of suspense, great performances courtesy of James Stewart and Grace Kelly, not to mention making the most out of being in one room the whole movie. It again has the montage, and once again, because some artists are very strict on copyright, I had to switch out the music because in the version that was uploaded, you hear Queen's Another One Bites the Dust. But as you see in a disclaimer we put there, I originally used Fleetwood Mac's Go Your Own Way, and we had to change it out, because copyright claims are BS, and to make matters worse, that's one of my favorite songs, so it just in general was disappointing. Thankfully, we did maintain Bob Seger's Rock and Roll Never Forgets for the credits, because that at least gets yellow, not red. It's also the first instance of a post-credit scene where I have a plate of Taco Bell, and a tease of the next review. Speaking of which, this soon led to me reviewing what is currently the only anime I have covered on the show, as well as the first TV series that I've covered, I think. This was The World of Naruto, an anime I had watched a little over what was at the time 4 years ago. Now, that was 8 years ago. This was a rather obscure anime that I mostly saw because of the fact that Veronica Taylor provided the English voice of the title character, which also applies to an anime OVA called Arcade Gamer Fubuki, which centered on a girl with magical panties that make her practically unstoppable at video games.
Ooh, let the good times roll.
Which I may cover just for a laugh if I decide to do so. But The World of Naruto was a show I enjoyed quite a bit, as it had a charm that won me over quite easily. Not to mention, Veronica Taylor is adorable as the main character. And I gotta take a moment to also pay my respects to the late Rachel Lillis, who plays Naruto's older sister Kanaka, who also sells it as the older woman in a young girl's body. This is also the first review where I don't do the montage. Instead, I basically mention that Naruto and Kazuto, her boyfriend, are still together, and Kazuto is a part of a Fleetwood Mac tribute band where he does the Lindsey Buckingham vocals, while Kirisu Makise does Christine McVie's vocals, Misty from Pokemon does Stevie Nicks' vocals, while Issei Hyodo plays lead guitar, Patrick Starr is on the drums, and somebody named Matt, who I knew in middle school, is playing bass guitar. I also made a brief, but nevertheless significant remark regarding Crunchyroll, formerly Funimation's, treatment of Vic Mignogna, as at that moment I was of the belief that his sexual misconduct allegations were a bunch of baloney, and that his allegers, Jamie Marchi and Monica Rial, were full of crap and trying to take advantage of the Me Too movement for their own personal gain. As for if I still believe that, well, in some ways, yes. There's a lot of indications that Vic Mignogna may be innocent, and I still hold true to my beliefs. At the same time, though, I am also aware that there's no way to prove that either side is innocent or guilty, as a defamation and wrongful termination case that Mignogna filed was dropped and his appeal was denied, so there's no way to tell if he did or didn't commit any of the alleged acts. But I can make a case for Veronica Taylor to be a part of Crunchyroll's dubbing team, alongside the likes of Colleen Klinkenbeard, Caitlin Glass, Justin Briner, and various other Texas-based voice actors who should also be in some California-based dubs. I once again also implemented a post-credits scene, which followed after the police's da-do-do-do-da-da-da, which I chose over something I think would have been better, which was every little thing she does is magic, as it more or less captures what the world of Norway was about. Same goes for To Love Ru, which I said was exactly like this, but with Lala showing up naked every couple of seconds. I'm not sure if that's quite the case, although I wouldn't be surprised if somebody also compared it to Urusei Yatsura or some other alien-human romance anime or manga that existed. But getting back to said post-credit scene, it then led into the next review, and also had a reference to a video from Kideo706 called the Gmod Suicide Mouse Survival Guide. Only instead of a picture of a cop, it was just Mola Ram, and somehow it was more deafening than how he made it. Anyway, let's look at the next review. I love this movie. Blue Thunder is an awesome thrill ride that was a joy to review, because this movie has stuck with me since I found the VHS for the film at a Goodwill one day. This review, to me, was an attempt to bring more awareness to the film, as it's one of those where you never really hear much about it, and it's a truly underrated gem. Plus, also showcases just how cool Roy Scheider was, and why when you put Malcolm McDowell in a film and have him play a bad guy, chances are it will be worth a screening. But surprisingly, I missed a production detail that I am just now finding out, which is that Blue Thunder was parodied in Tailspin, specifically with the episode Baloo Thunder. In that episode, Baloo helps out his friend Buzz after he is framed for stealing a top secret project from Buzz's employer, Industrious Shere Khan, by a corporate spy within Khan Industries for a rival competitor, which in reality was something revolutionary for the time period Tailspin is set in, namely the 1930s, and is, you guessed it, a helicopter. How did I miss this? I don't know. But it does prove that someone did see Blue Thunder, and I'm glad knowing that. It's also where the "Catch Ya Later" outro comes from, and once again, does not have the fan montage, but at the end, because I don't have the excellent soundtrack, sadly, I did use Tom Petty's classic song, Learning to Fly, because if I flew in a helicopter, chances are that song would play in my head. Same with Momoya Yorozu, who is also an admirer of Blue Thunder. Overall, it was a good time. The first Halloween review I ever did, Stand By Me was certainly an interesting idea I went with. Instead of doing a horror film, which wouldn't happen for another 2 years, I chose to review another one of my favorite movies of all time. That just so happened to be a Stephen King adaptation, and not one of my other favorite Stephen King adaptations, like Misery or The Dead Zone, which I think I might do just for the hell of it should I choose to. This is a good one, as watching and reviewing it reminded me of really the good times I had with my friends, one of whom resembled Corey Feldman, which gave me a good vibe. And that dude is still one of my best friends in the whole world, and watching any film with Corey Feldman always reminds me of him. This one did have the fan montage, here showcasing certain individuals who were Stephen King fans, all to Bob Seger's Night Moves. While I used John Lennon's version of Stand By Me because I sure as hell didn't have the Ben E. King version, so I figured I used one version I had on standby. No pun intended. But yeah, this was good. Here's a film that was so awesome and so enjoyable to review that it's almost hard to think that I did this in November, which is sometimes an off period for me. But The Fugitive was a good time, and was one of a couple of things that kept me sane while in the confines of my house. It was also the first review where you saw me really embrace my inner Nintendo Capri Sun and let off a good burp during a sentence whenever one was building up, often accompanied by an image of Barney from The Simpsons doing exactly that. This is also a symbol of just how raw and uncut these voiceovers tend to be, as often you hear everything unless I feel I have to edit it out, or in most cases, like with more recent reviews, add some effects like reverb, slowing it down, speeding it up, and vice versa. I also claim it to be one of Izuku Midoriya's favorite films, because My Hero Academia is an obsession of mine amongst numerous other obsessions. And there's no fan montage because Izuku Midoriya's approval is the only approval you need, along with my own. I should also mention that at one point Walter Hill was going to direct the film, but this ultimately was not to be. This ended with Dawkins the Hunter, a favorite song from their catalog if I do say so myself, and also has a post-credit scene with All Might, who kind of sounds like Ron Perlman here, when out of his base form, and was directed by Eijiro Kirishima, which explains how manly the film is and how manly I am. Needless to say, this was fun. And, to wrap up the year, I took on the task of reviewing Elf, which is one of a couple of films from the 2000s which I have covered on the show, and my first Christmas review, which is a plus. This one was quite enjoyable, like the fact that the hospital in the film was also used in Happy Gilmore and Final Destination 2, or the fact that Jim Carrey and Chris Farley were attached to play Buddy, which would have certainly been a movie, and in my opinion, would have been just as funny, especially with Chris Farley's rambunctious energy. It once again had an epic belch, was the first instance of me using this image from Kindergarten Cop, and also had me lip-syncing Double Vision by Foreigner, not to mention more instances of someone on camera. It also features plenty of me allowing you to listen to the best lines rather than what I would do now, which is actually show clips, which I think I'll do now as an early Christmas present.
Hey! Have you seen these toilets? They're ginormous!
You sit on a throne of lies.
Did you hear that?
And, to close out the video, I used Bob Seger's rendition of Little Drummer Boy in order to make the holiday vibe go down smoother than the eggnog at Christmas time, as well as another post-credit scene. So, yeah, that's pretty much the whole, just a lot of the first year of these reviews in general. You can definitely tell I was getting my footing with at first, and certainly learning the grasp of things as I went along, but nevertheless you could tell that there's definitely something right there, and really the only thing that hasn't changed here is the fact that I'm still talking about movies, I'm still talking about the shows I like to watch. Really, I'm just showing a lot of my love and passion for a lot of these because, well, these are classics for a reason. And if you're wondering, yes, I will be doing some for the other years that I did reviews, including 2021, 2022, and even last year. Plus, I'll probably also do one this year at the end of the year if I decide to do so. Maybe, I don't know. But, nevertheless, I hope you enjoyed this look back at the first year of the channel and really these videos. That first year of Ace pretty much giving me a lot of material and just running with it. And it's been certainly a journey, to say the very least. So, until the next review or whatever I decide to pull out of my hat, or whatever Ace decides to pull out of his hat, I will catch you later. I'll see you next time, whenever, or you get the idea. Y'all take care, okay?